Well, we've got more to come. And we're on a roll. We are on a roll now. The term pioneer has substantially altered, I think, since most of us were in school and learning all about westward expansion, coonskin caps, and Conestoga wagons. Today's pioneers might be just folks who, because of some uncommon passion and unique inventiveness, rather than conquer new worlds, actually create them. And in this particular case, create them in a garage. The biography of Steve Wozniak is already historic. It's even legendary. But you'll see today that he's not spending a lot of time on the past. Woz is still on the move. Come on out, Steve Wozniak.
Nice and easy. Good to see you all here today. One of my favorite little machines. Machines all turn into robots, so I'll call it a pre-robot. Great. Segway is part of life, you know. That's what technology is supposed to do, enhance our lives. I just ride this thing out of my door every day, go down to the movie theater, park it in the theater, watch a movie, come home. It's one of my 3 Segway lives. The other one is I take it to every city I go to, get around the block, see a lot more of the city that way. And the third one is Segway Polo, lots of fun, big part of life. Some time ago, went to a presentation by Douglas Hofstadter, and he was talking about computer intelligence and creativity and how every time we defined what a computer would have to be intelligent, what it would have to do, when it finally did that, we said, no, we moved the bar a little higher. It really, tic-tac-toe is too simple a game. It boils down to a simple set of rules. So we make a computer that can play chess or something. But we all say it's not real intelligence. It's not really the way humans think. And how about creativity? We wrote the programs he talked about that would, create pieces of art, whether they were painted art or they were music that sounded pretty attractive. Yeah, a computer generated that from just a set of rules of how to create it and some randomness. Yeah, and, but it's not the real high-level creativity because he said a real artist sits down and has impressions and has to judge the music that he's creating. And sure, we write judging programs in computers and they can judge what they're creating to make it real art. But real art often gets into some of the things that we've lived through in our human lives. You look at a painting and it kind of reminds you of a time in your life, a scene at the beach, maybe sometime you were in a foreign city and it was crowded and bustling. And so the computer hasn't lived that life. It hasn't been a robot walking around in those cities. I've had a huge interest in education. As a matter of fact, I came here to Houston once, and they really shocked me with what they were doing with the education system in the schools. They had a card that plugged into the Apple II computer, and it spoke like a natural voice. It sounded like a real human. It also had graphics, things that moved on the screen that were attractive like cartoons. Well, I took it home, and I found out that the kids that I exposed to it, including my own, were just drawn to the fact that it was human. As well as a computer being unusual, it drew them. And I thought, the more that a computer could be a teacher, the more that it seems like a real human being, the more the kids are going to want to learn. It's kind of like you're increasing the levels of what is normal in people. I found as a teacher, I had a computer class, and I found that it was less important what I taught the kids than if I could inspire them to want to learn. And you have a trouble. It's really easy if you're a teacher with one person. One-on-one, you can never fail. If you have a class of 6 kids, no problem. You know where every kid's head is. You have a class of 20, and you know where every kid is thinking. You can ask them questions. Everyone's paying attention. You have a class of 30, and there's always enough that can hide out, and they're drifting off and daydreaming and not paying attention in class and not getting the learning done so well. So class size became a real problem. And I thought, what if we could have one teacher per student? A bunch of computers, 30 computers that were all teachers. As a matter of fact, when we started the whole personal computer revolution, one of our goals was to bring computers to the school and take over, and they would be so much better than books, because a book could only present one direction, and a computer is interactive and goes 2 directions. And we had all these dreams that, wow, the kids were going to be using 100% of their brains instead of just 10% of them, and I was scared. These new kids that grew up with computers were going to be so much smarter than us, and obviously that didn't happen, and But as far as what it would take to make a computer a teacher, it would almost have to be a friend. A real one-to-one teacher has to be a friend, somebody you know in a lot of the human ways, somebody that you want to be with and share stories with and jokes and things even besides school. And we always stop short in our development of developing that level of intelligence in the computer. We kind of do what's easy, we stop at animated presentations, we present things. And it's sort of like an animated book. And it does the job, but it does the same job as a book does, maybe a little better. It does some testing, it does some reporting, and those are things for us, but that's not things for the child, it's not things for the student. What I thought of was, it'd be nice if we had a paradigm shift. Today, in education in the United States, the presentation is fixed. You hear the same words from the same teacher in the same classroom in the same seat. You hear the same words as all the other students. And you get the same materials, and you have roughly the same amount of time to prepare for a test. And you go in and take a test, and some kids picked it up very well in a short time, and some didn't. Some spent time on it, some didn't. And your test, the grade, is the variable. That's your measure. And I thought, what if you picked your grade and just said, I want to be competent, A level in every single subject. And I want to go at different speeds. Well, a computer has that advantage. It can go at different speeds for all 30 of the kids in the class on 30 computer teachers. They'd all be moving different speeds in different subjects, and yet they wouldn't be separated from their friends. They could stay in that class year after year after year with the same friends they have, but all be learning at different speeds, and they'll all get up and pass through when they're competent. And I thought this would be a paradigm shift, because now the presentation is variable, but the grade is fixed. And then I thought, what does it take for a computer to attract a student? It has to seem like a person, yes, and we can finally get to the point that a computer can almost look like movies, realistic hands in front of you, but it's still on that 2D screen. That's one problem, and the screens are, we can get around that. We have ways, the movie people have ways to make it look like it's a real person there. But a real human teacher will look at a student and see that the students from the facial expressions. How are they doing today? Are they a little tense? Is something going well for them in their life? Is something going poorly? Would ask questions. How is Johnny doing at home? So this computer robot that I imagine would have to have a little bit of appendages to look a little bit more human than just a blank screen, but it would also have to be able to know something about that student and follow them and their family and what kind of jokes they like. And the same computer program in this artificial intelligence teacher world would present differently to different students. It would tell how you should talk to one person. You meet another and you start noticing their facial reactions, and I should be talking to this person a different way than I talk to the other person. And this computer teacher would actually do that, vary its tonal quality and pay very much attention to the student's state. Some days it might say, well, today really isn't a good day for studying. You're really tired and it shows. So let's go do this other fun thing. Let's play a game for a little while and then entice them into a little studying. Maybe not get as 100% done that day, but do the sort of things that a real thinking human would do and relate to the student's, state of mind at all times. Education has a problem, which is the class size, I think, is the biggest detriment to good learning. I mean, first of all, you have to assume that it's a value that we want all the kids to learn. And I'm not even going to say that I believe that. Obviously, mathematics has always been important to me. Should every child have to learn mathematics in school? Or do we only need a few people that know how to multiply 3-digit numbers to make the world work? There's some society I heard about, and they had phrases for one, another, some more, and a bunch. And I thought pretty much everything most of us do in life gets by very fine on just those terms. But we know mathematics. We all learned it, so we want to teach it. It's kind of like we're going to pass on the things that we know how to do to our kids, and it almost makes us feel better. And we also know how to teach it. We have formulas. We have books that have existed for hundreds of years for some of these subjects, and they're very easy, so we might as well teach it to everyone. We could teach the entire realm of computer science to a 5th grader. There isn't anything you learn in computer science that needs higher level concepts. Well, I'm sorry, a 7th grader. You do need to probably understand symbolic reasoning. The state that you get to where you can learn algebra in school, you could probably learn everything there is about computer design, and that's all it would take. It would be a great subject, and you'd learn so much logical thinking. You would learn how to look at very deep problems and find a lot of small solutions building up to larger solutions, the way a pianist learns how to create a classical piece. And we could do that, but why don't we teach it? Because we didn't learn it in school, so why should our kids learn it? We don't question what should be done in school. There's a certain number of hours of the day in school. If it's 8 hours in school or 6 hours, these many hours go to these subjects, and it's all standardized, and we're not going to really risk changing it very much. So the class size is the biggest problem, because the kids can learn that, well, if I'm not interested in education, and by 3rd or 4th grade, a lot of kids, you can just tell for the rest of their life, they don't care about education, just their influences outside of school, home. The teacher isn't 24/7. So a lot of the influences, kids in our country, drop out and decide education's not important. But then what is education and what is intelligence? I've come to, I look at all the kids in school and I think back, intelligence is pretty much watching the same news stories, reading the same newspapers, and saying the same things as everyone else. If you're in agreement with everyone else, we're all right, so we're all intelligent. And the one who challenges the world is flat is probably, doesn't appear as very intelligent. The methods of thinking, it's like we learn how to time when two canoes on a river going in opposite directions will meet, but we never ask the students, why is this wrong? Why doesn't it work in the real world? Why is it almost unimportant? But we love learning these things because we can. So the money problem, we're always going to have the money problem in education. We had it my entire life, and it's because education's a right, so it has to come from the government. Government gives money according to voting power, and a family of 5 gets no more votes than a family of 2. So somebody's being left out of the formula for how much money goes to educate children. I look at robotics, and I look at the robots that are around today being built, manufacturing robots. You got a lot of the I had friends at Hewlett-Packard that split off and started companies, and they had vision robots that could go around and pick up blocks, kind of like the artificial intelligence experiments you see in research aspects of universities. But the trouble is, the market for robots, where you could sell them, turns out to be General Motors. And you got to build a robot to sit there and, put the same bolt in and attach a wheel, the same as a person would do. But at least the robot saved a person from a very boring job. But it's not like full thinking. It's not like intelligence. The robot is really thinking. It just is doing an incredible job. And it's doing it in one little place. And then we have a robot that attaches and tests the heads on a VCR. And it's just one little robot sitting in one place. And it's not very... It's not like what I think if I were to say, what is artificial intelligence in a robot? What is intelligence? I would say, give me a robot that can make a cup of coffee. I don't expect that to happen in my lifetime. That means you could come into my house and make a cup of coffee. I could go into your house and make a cup of coffee. Imagine what it would take for a robot to do that. To somehow walk into your unfamiliar house, somehow negotiate all steps and obstacles and know what they are. Find what might be a kitchen. Think about the thinking that's going on in your brain to do that. Try to identify where a coffee machine might be. Maybe read some words on it, pull some things to see if there's a place to put something in, start searching in drawers for something that would fit in that. The only reason I can make a cup of coffee myself is because I've done it all my life. I saw other people do it. I've had a few coffee makers at home, so when I go to a hotel, I eventually can look at it long enough and figure out how it must work, and sometimes I'm right. So I don't expect that we would build that many, as simple as it sounds, robot that can make a cup of coffee. How incredibly complicated it can be. There's some examples now of robots that seem to walk, but it's sort of simulated programmed walking. To really walk with all the joints a human has is an incredibly complicated task, much less try to combine it with vision or a good hand that works well. Someday the robots might be better than us. Someday somebody might program a robot that really is managing all of its little body parts and with gyroscopes walking correctly, and even has more than us, has a camera in each finger. So each finger sees how close it is to things. I think also I'd like a robot that can hear me. I'd like to talk to my television set and say, television, I'm going to bed, turn the channel, turn off. Or turn the channel up, television channel up, television, go to the football game. But when you're in a crowded, noisy environment, we haven't been able to make the technology yet that can hear and understand a human being across a room. And yet every other human being alive that has hearing, can hear you and understand what you're saying, even with other people talking. So why can't we make technology that good as a human? It's because there's been a lot of research done on ways to make good listening devices. We can do it when the microphone's right in front of you and the input to a computer is very good. It can pick up a lot of your words and phrases correctly. But what does the human mind do differently that's beyond what we've been able to create for hearing? It sort of knows that syllables come at a rate. It sort of knows certain frequencies apply to different people. Women might have a higher frequencies and a certain man trying to listen to has lower frequencies. And by weeding some of those out, I can hear more accurately. I'll tune my attention in a certain direction. A lot of different things going on at once. And we have artificial intelligence projects that show, not artificial intelligence, engineering projects that just show we can make better sound detectors, when we apply one of these criteria at a time, one of these disciplines. But combining all the disciplines at once is what makes it really work as well as a human someday. But when you start a sentence, The weather outside is 72 degrees. I'm sort of expecting the answer. I'm already, if I don't hear the words very accurately, I'll be able to piece together what kind of words might have fit. My brain is thinking ahead. And we've had some research projects along these lines, but we never combine it with all the others. So that means that this device would have to think ahead. But how can you think ahead unless you've lived a human life and you know what kind of things would be said? It's not fair to program in. If you've already got something about the weather, they might talk temperature or degrees, and who knows if they're going to talk Celsius or Fahrenheit. Once I was taking some statistics courses at Berkeley, and we had this huge, horrendous calculation that could take up to 40 minutes by hand to solve one problem that might come on the test with a bunch of variables, and it was basically controlled experiments. Analysis of variance was the field. And I sat, man, I wonder if I can do some algebra and make a simpler formula. And I did some really hard work for days and came up with some algebra that fit the definition of the calculator we were allowed to use. And the answer was, the critical variable was just the standard deviation of the means divided by the mean of the standard deviations. It sounds simple. It fits an explanation on a blackboard simply. It was 1/5 as many calculator keystrokes in the end. And I taught it to other people that I was tutoring. When it comes to tests, they usually get higher grades than me, but even if I was the tutor. And so I thought, why, when there's a better formula, why hasn't anybody hit on it? Isn't there a whole world of statisticians that want to hit on a better formula? Well, for one thing, they do it all on computers anyway, but I started walking the streets of Berkeley and found books up to 40 years old on statistics, and they all had the same variables, the same equations, the same ordering in the book, and all they did was change the examples to be topical of the day. In a certain year, they might be referring to examples with AIDS. Another one might go back to World War II, some phenomena. And I thought, my gosh, it's just publish or perish. Rewrite the same thing with today's examples, and don't try to research and find the new and really push ahead very far, and get your thought of as intelligent if you know the facts of today, the world of today. Like I said before, having the same answers as everyone else makes you automatically, by definition, intelligent. But what would it be? What would be the alternative? I mean, we're binary. We like to say, take a side. It's very simple. If it's just an issue, it could be an engineering issue too. But I'm going to take a side. I am for higher gas mileage in cars. I'm for more money for education. Somebody else wants to take the binary side of zero. I'm for less money for education. It's very easy to take a side, and yet none of us did the real strong engineering, calculation, scientist work of saying, given all the aspects of our society and what we have money and what we have to spend it on, what's the amount that should go to education? If I did a calculation, then I could say, are we above or below where I think it should be? And then I would say, now I know what kind of person to be. But we treat it more as a win-loss contest, a me versus you thing, because it's easy for humans. It's very difficult for us to carry around very deep, complicated calculators that can, calculate the answers to what we should win, how much we should spend, which alternative approaches to things, Blu-ray versus HD DVD. Where do you stand on that? It's the same sort of thing. It's easy to take a side, and it's very difficult to go blank and calculate what should it be, and then say, how do I match that? Sometimes it makes me think that human intelligence, the intelligence we have, is actually artificial. One time, it's like we claim we have intelligence, and what is it? We don't want to say it's the numbers that we measure on IQ tests, because sometimes that turns out to be discriminatory, and we say, well, intelligence really is different than what you can measure. How far you get in life clearly doesn't have a lot to do with academic intelligence. Everybody who started these little personal computer companies had no college degree. I'm the only one of them that went back and actually got one, because I wanted to tell my kids what my parents told me. Yes, I went to this school, and boy, what I tell my kids when they go to school? Not what you learn, how much it is. They've heard it from everyone. It's going to get you somewhere in life. I grew up with very strong education values, but it's the most fun time of your life, and you should pick a school where the people are going to be like you. You're going to learn as much as is in your brain, no matter what school you go to. You should pick the one where people are going to be like you. Then you're going to at least enjoy the learning. One thing I did was, when I was teaching computers, make it very fun. Make everything you can. Build in a little bit of that gamishness into the computers. Let the kids be very individual. And it takes an awful lot of energy and work, 24 hours a day on the part of the teacher, to keep up with kids that are different. When you go into a large class these days, kid wants to look, what's inside that cabinet? We're born with a natural curiosity. The answer is, I'm sorry, you can't go there today. We're doing that another day. Everybody has to do the same things. It's the only way to manage that many kids. Well, I finally figured out that I listened to a lot, some of the speeches here, and the great world problems, we're going to really solve them with technology. That's what it's all about. And we're close. We're close, because I figured out we can now implant something like GPS chips in everybody on Earth someday soon. And then we can have cams that are implanted, and cams are in all the walls and buildings and everywhere you go, every light bulb. And then they're all in communication with each other with a mesh network. And then I can type your name into my computer and see what you're doing 24/7, any hour of the day. And that's going to solve the world's problems. Because you won't want to live in a world like that, and you won't want to have children in a world like that, and the population will finally go down, and we've got enough resources for everyone. Thank you very much.
I don't know if I even dare ask you a question, but I just want to tell you thank you.
Oh, sure.
I want to tell you
much.
thank you for personal computers and ask you this question. It's a personal one. Was there a point after Apple I, Apple II, the Apple, and then Apple II, where you had an aha moment and you realized just exactly...
Designing a whole bunch of things. I was a designer. I want to be known for being a good designer, not starting personal computers. Steve Jobs was the one who understood the electronics, but he also understood the marketing, the operations. He melded it all together. I think that's much more important. I try to hide out from that, but I did some great designs. And I did many after the computer, for floppy disks and printer interfaces and software, and thinking up totally different approaches than had ever been done before. But when the biggest advantages I ever had in the Apple days were having few resources, not much money. You have to look for cheap ways to do things that are affordable. And if you've never done it before but you're smart, you will design a better one than if you've been doing it your whole life with the old methods, because components, the building blocks change, and you'll be up to using the best building blocks to build a floppy disk or whatever today without having to follow the formulas from the past. So it's better if you do something new your first time.
All right. Thanks, you.
Thanks.